Well, thank you so much. It's a real honor to be here with Mainers. In fact, I just want to thank you because Maine has been a great partner in passing legislation. I've worked with Sarah Nichols and Matt Prindeville for many, many years, and your legislators. And our two states on the coast are really leading the nation in waste reduction, toxics reduction, and extended producer responsibility implementation. So thank you. And I will go ahead and start sharing my screen real quick. And we'll start at the beginning and go through this. And I'd be happy to take questions along the way. If it's not clear something I say, please feel free to raise your hand. I probably won't see it in the screen. It's a little bit small for me to see, but I'm happy to take questions along the way and make sure that everyone can keep up with what I'm saying. So I'm with the National Stewardship Action Council, and we formed the council in 2015 as a spinoff from the California Product Stewardship Council, which I had formed in 2007. And we were so successful in California at promoting EPR and educating legislators about it and starting to pass bills that we decided we really needed to have a national organization because we were getting so many inquiries from other states that we had no vehicle to help them. So we formed this national C4 under IRS rules so we can advocate more, we can lobby more, we can do the things that we need to do in order to pass really good bills that we can't do as a 501c3. Education can only go so far. Sometimes you need good lobbyists. So that's why we formed the C4. We also have a C3, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But our goal and what we're doing is that our vision is that the United States attain an equitable and circular economy, and we advocate to get there. The C3 educates to get there. So I'll talk about that. And I'm also going to share not only the progress to date in California and the nation, but what you can do to help and what we can all do together to make sure we are successful. So again, we're a 501c3. We advocate producers fairly share in their responsibility for a circular and equitable economy. Before EPR bills, they were basically doing almost nothing. And I am proud to say our two states again have led the charge in this area. And as I speak everywhere, and I'm really honored to speak to you today. And our board is always open to new members. So if anybody from Maine would be interested in joining, we'd love that. But we've got members from New Mexico and LA and Texas and all over the country, Indiana. But we represent water, consulting, all different kinds of groups, and even plastics recyclers. And then we have the Stewardship Action Foundation, our 501c3. And again, we have, we're excited to see the city of Santa Fe just joined, but we'd like more diversity of geographic location and also want to keep our diversity in general, and would be pleased to have you join that organization too. So the way I'm going to start with this is that when the bathtub is overflowing, what is the first thing that you do? It's not grab the mop. And that's typically what we've done. The smart thing to do is turn the spigot off first, then grab the mop. And that sounds obvious, but we've had these household hazardous waste programs that get 25% maybe of the materials, and all these PFAS are coming, and now they're saying clean up the water. Well, why don't we just turn off the spigot and then we can clean up the mess, what's left of it. But the problem that we've seen is that this industry, we have, and governments in particular, local governments, we've been very slow to push back on the national companies and say enough. We have to turn the spigot off, whether it's waste, toxics, PFAS, whatever it be. So I'm going to keep promoting that concept of turn the spigot off first. And that aligns directly with what a circular economy is. We design waste and pollution out of the system first. Then we keep products and materials in motion, which organics, composting, and recycling for products. And then we go back and clean up the mess that we've made and regenerate the natural systems we've harmed. And we've harmed pretty much all of them at this point. And we need to decouple economic activity from the consumption of finite resources, clearly. That is not working when the population has gone from, when I was born 60 years ago, was 3.5 million people, and we're now at 8 billion people, and now we're at 8 billion people as of November of last year. This is completely and utterly unsustainable on every level. So EPR is a great way to help us get there. Product stewardship generally is, voluntary, and EPR is generally mandated, but there's also a lot of devils that live in details, as we all know. And so it's not just about terrific plans and being rah-rah advocates, but we have to be really, really good at the details of these bills. And I know you know that, so I will move on and explain kind of how we got this far in the United States, where we are, and how we're going to move it even further. And a lot of this started with our fight in California. I don't know if all of you know this, but we adopted the first EPR ordinance for meds in Alameda County, which is Oakland, California, in 2012. And pharma threatened to sue them and did, and said, you have no right. This is an interstate commerce clause violation. You can't do this. You can't make manufacturers be responsible for anything from the local level. And the Ninth Circuit disagreed with that argument, and it went all the way to the US Supreme Court, and Alameda County won. I could go in and write a book about what happened in there, but the reason I'm telling you this is this literally wrote the rules of the road for local governments legally in the United States to go after EPR for any product that has a health and safety impact. The reason that's important to you is because I think packaging now fits that bill because of all the microplastics. We are now finding it in heart tissue and heart arteries. We're finding it in placentas. We can actually now go to the level of packaging being considered a toxic product. And that would allow local governments to push back, and on many other toxic products as well. But this was really a great tool for us, because in California, I ended up passing 12 ordinances, which led to the state bill, which I'll talk about in a minute. And I know you've passed your packaging EPR, and congratulations on that. It's huge. You went first. But this is a big deal, because when local governments push from the bottom, sometimes that helps get the states to move, and then the national. So in California, these are all the bills that we have now for extended producer responsibility. It started with ag pesticide containers, recalled products like lead-painted lunch boxes that were ending up in public facilities. And we said, no, we don't want those. We shouldn't have those. Those shouldn't have even been sold. Then we had mercury thermostats, which we followed Maine, I believe, on. You went first. Paint, carpet, mattresses, medications, and sharps was in 2018. So imagine that was 5 years after we started with the first ordinance. Loose batteries last year, and packaging. So, and we also did not just loose batteries, but batteries embedded in electronics, and we put those in the electronics program. So look at all these stewardship organizations that have formed. We're not sure what organization is going to get approved in California for batteries, but we have now even the Circular Action Alliance just got approved, as you know, in Colorado to manage packaging. I'm not sure if they'll get approved here, but it's exciting to see the progress in 10 years. I mean, we were at a place that, and I'm going to close my door. Hang on just a second. My family just got home from their breakfast. And I wanted to, we're making huge progress in this area. And part of the reason in California we started making huge progress and moving the needle even further in the last few years, and I wanted to share this with you because it was so effective for us, was starting study trips with legislators and policymakers. In fact, we came to Maine last year. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But I'm on the board of the California Foundation for the Environment and the Economy. And I don't know if you have an organization like that in Maine, but even if you don't, they take legislators on study trips. I would highly recommend, if you need it, to set those up, because our legislators and policymakers came back changed forever after seeing how Canada and Vancouver and you all are doing all these different recycling programs, and sometimes a lot better than us. And then they come back and want to pass bills, and it's been incredibly effective. So last year, we took our legislators and policymakers to Maine and then to Montreal, and we saw your bag drop program in Clink, which we do not have here in California. Our bottle bill is state run, the only one that's really not EPR in the country. And we've lost a lot of our drop-off locations, so we're pleased to see that. And our legislators all started getting their wheels turning about what we can do to get bag drops. And then we went to Go Refill. We met with your legislators. We met our state treasurer here on the far left. That's Fiona Ma. She's running for lieutenant governor here in California next year. And she met with your state treasurer while we were there. We got to meet him. And it's just wonderful, the relationship building that will help us all move forward when they trust each other, can pick up the phone and even text each other. And I wanted to highlight something else that really helped California move along the last few years, which was a state commission on recycling markets and curbside recycling. That was formed in legislation. The legislature was frustrated. They weren't getting bills passed in waste management like we wanted. And so they asked this broad group of stakeholders that was appointed by CalRecycle, our state agency, to come up with some policy recommendations. And they had to be unanimous. And there were 17 commissioners. I was elected chair of the commission. And in 2 years, we came back with 34 policy recommendations with unanimous votes. Waste haulers, NGOs, local governments, rural, urban, the whole thing, unions. And it was incredibly effective at getting bills introduced because legislators knew that they would have a lot of support. And we got a lot of great bills out of that commission. So I wanted to highlight a couple because these are now things that we're promoting nationally. And one is labeling. We cannot reduce contamination in the system when the public is, the first thing they see is the label. They buy it because of what's on the label. So that's sending a market signal, keep doing that thing. But if the thing is an enviro cooler, which is polystyrene, it says biodegradable, no microplastics, recyclable, made in the USA, all the good things, you buy that, you put that in the recycling bin, and you contaminate the system. And you send the wrong market signal that you should keep making these enviro coolers. This was purchased in Walmart in 2021 here in Orange County, California. That's how bad the mislabeling is. Until we fix that, we cannot clean up streams. So we've gone after, and the commission determined we have to go after greenwashing in the labeling. The other thing is the red cup with the chasing arrow. Chasing arrows, everybody knows, you know, the studies show from even the Consumer Brands Association, 82% of the people believe that means it's recyclable. And that is mislabeling. That is confusing. So there's Wild West, no sheriff in town. And now we're glad that the green guides are being opened up at the federal level. We've commented on those, but we have to stop greenwashing. And I was quoted in the New York Times saying, nobody should be able to lie to the public. And that's what they're doing all day on the labels. So this is something your state can also take on. We did truth in labeling legislation, and this all came out of the commission's work. We passed in California. We actually got it introduced in Maryland this year. It didn't pass. Love to see you all follow up on this because we've got to harmonize labels nationally, and we can't let them continue to lie on the label. Then we started realizing it was more than just the recycling symbol or what's biodegradable. Even on cannabis products, they were labeling vape pens, which are an electronic with a controlled substance and a battery, all truly disposable. Clearly, they are not truly disposable. Nobody knows what that means. So again, we worked with the cannabis industry and said, you cannot call this disposable. You must label it as hazardous and must be taken to a facility. So they've had to, we passed that bill last year too. And again, Luz Rivas, our author, she came on one of our study trips to Vancouver and is chair of the Natural Resources Committee. So it does make a difference when they get out of the bubble, the legislative bubble, and lobbying, and they get to see these programs up close. We also worked on, and we were co-sponsor of SB 343, the truth in labeling about what's recyclable and what can use the chasing arrow. We passed that bill. We also passed a bill in California called it's truth in labeling for flushable wipes. Well, most of them are not flushable at all, and they're plastic. And people think they're paper, and then they clog their systems, clog your sanitation systems at the city level, and cause all kinds of costs and problems. So we negotiated with Kimberly-Clark and who was the other one, Procter & Gamble, and we agreed that they should have the do not flush, that circle there at the bottom. We did it actually in red, required it be in red so people could see it of a certain size. And that was another. So there were 3 truth in labeling bills that we worked on. And then we got all kinds of press about this. The industry fought it very, very hard. And it really became clear to me, they knew exactly what they were doing with this chasing arrow. They knew people would buy it because it had a chasing arrow. And that's why we had to get it off. So if it wasn't recyclable, and we had to negotiate where is the line of recyclability. So our line was basically what I call a D minus minus. If you don't get 60% actual recycling in California by July of 2025, you cannot use the chasing arrow on your product. And if you do, there's fines. So they have a whole website at CalRecycle now about the labeling issue. And, this is something I really hope you all can take up too, because it's very important to all of us and getting contamination down in systems and sending the right signals. So then reducing toxics. I want to talk about this for a minute. This industry is having a really hard time, especially post-COVID, hiring people to work in it. There's lots of reasons for that. One is that we're the 7th in the line of companies or employers that have the most deaths in the industry. That's clearly a massive problem. But the other problem is it's not cool to be in this industry. And partly it's because you're being exposed to all kinds of things. And we have to stop that. We have to stop making our waste stream dangerous for our workers. And so this really, again, turning off the spigot to me on hazardous products that end up in the trash is very, very important. So one of the bills we passed last year in California, which is up for hearing actually right now in your state, and I hope to testify immediately after this, is banning the sale of mercury-containing lighting. It's in glass that breaks, and people will not take the time to go to hazardous waste facilities. Most times they will just throw it in the trash where it breaks, and then it exposes all of our workers. We have hot hits and leachate in the landfills where it ends up. And it volatilizes, it gets into the air too. So we were first to pass it, including the long tubes of up to 8 feet. Vermont had passed it first with the 4-foot tubes. We got up to the 8-foot tubes. So again, building off each other's bills really helps. And we had no opposition. We worked with all the potential opposition, including universities and researchers, and we got the bill done, which is now introduced in Maine. So I'm excited about that. In fact, it's Representative Bell's bill, LD 1814. So hopefully you can support that. Again, this was another recommendation of the statewide recycling commission, because we don't need mercury lighting. We have LEDs. They're twice as efficient, and everybody doesn't want, coal burning power plants and all that stuff. Well, this is a great way to do it, is get to move to the efficient lighting. Turning the spigot off again, PFAS. These are the DDT of our generation. They are forever out there. They are bioaccumulative. They're in way too many products that were never labeled with the skull and crossbones. We had no idea they were in there, whether it's waterproof mascara, yes, your toilet paper, yes, your textiles, yes, even feminine hygiene products. I cannot believe where they're everywhere, and they should never have been allowed. So we have to turn the spigot off as quickly as we can. So in California, we're doing this we've already banned it in firefighting foam, which we were spraying all over our forests. We're banning it in juvenile products, textiles, cosmetics. And now we've got other bills in this legislation, this session to bill, but these have already passed. And I fought very hard, by the way, to ban them in plastics under the US Plastics Pact, to be on the elimination list. People were not going to put it on there. And I said, that's crazy. And I will call it out as greenwashing this entire organization if they don't stop. So we got that in there. Now, mercury containing thermostats. This was a big one. You all passed it, I think, first in Maine. We passed it in 2008, but the state, it's a long story I won't have time to get into, but the state oversight was not good. It took too long. Did somebody have a question? And just let me know if you do. And then it's the highest rebate in the nation. Now we have $30 a thermostat for them to be returned. So we did a cleanup bill in 2021, and we're very happy about that. And then it'll sunset in 2030, but we haven't been selling them since 1992. So and with all the energy efficiency promotion for HVAC systems and electrification, we don't think there'll be many left after that. And then I wanted to share, we followed you on packaging, and I wanted to share the process that we went through to get there. Because again, we're 40 million people in California. We're 12% of the US market. If we get something done, it generally, companies will apply it nationally. They can't just do a line or a product just for California or a label. So we were very, very proud of this bill, and it took a lot of work, a lot of lobbying, and a lot of partnerships. And I'm showing pictures of people you don't know, probably, but some of them are lobbyists for the Cal Chamber, some for Republic Services, some for Waste Management, Oceana, Ocean Conservancy, everybody working together to get this bill passed. And it started in 2019 with a discussion about ending plastics, a focus on the pollution problem. That wasn't enough to convince the legislators or the voters. So it kept failing. And on one of the study trips, Senator Allen is there on the far right, and he chairs the Environmental Quality Committee, and this was his bill. And he asked me, he said, how do we get this done? I said, you've got to focus less on the environmentalists, and you have to include a lot more of the businesses that are going to have to implement this bill. That's the only way we're going to get agreement. And that's what he did. But in the meantime, the environmental groups were so upset, they introduced a ballot measure that basically was going to put a 1 cent tax on every single piece of single-use plastic sold in California. And that was going to go to the state, and it was really going to be left wide open for the state agency to manage it, which made me nervous because I've seen the state and producers do improper things that are not, I don't think, in alignment with the goals of the program. So I believe you have to have, good oversight no matter who's managing the money in the program. And that really wasn't what this proposition was, but it was a great way to keep industry at the table to negotiate the bill. So we reset the negotiating table with about 25 key people representing key groups. And these are all human beings that actually can get to yes. We did not include the groups that we thought would not get to yes. And I'm happy to explain who those were. But we took over 17 amendments, and Cal Recycle and the administration had to agree, or else the governor would have vetoed the bill. But the threat of the ballot, if that had gone to the voters, was going to cost both sides about $100 million to fight in the court of public opinion. And they realized it was way better just to pass the bill. So I want to share the key features because I don't think most people know this is not your typical EPR bill. It's, I call EPR 3.0 plus. And here's why. Because everything has to be recyclable or compostable by 2032. That's a design change. We have recycling rates that are interim, getting up to 65% by 2032. We have source reduction, which is not in every EPR bill, by weight and unit. That's very difficult to achieve by 2032. 10% by 2027, source reduction. 2% has to be reuse and refill. So again, we're requiring design change to go back to reuse and refill across the platform. 20% source reduction by 2030, with 4% being reuse and refill. And then we're going to evaluate every 5 years after 2030 if greater source reductions need to happen. Let the state agency oversee that. Then we're going to have other reduction tools which focus on optimization, such as lightweighting, concentrating, shifting to other packaging materials. And we recycle, the industry really wanted pretty much everything to be covered in source reduction by recycled content. We said it's not source reduction. We'll call it an alternative to source reduction, alternative compliance. Excuse me. But they're only allowed to use up to 8% to get to the 25% source reduction goal that they have to be recycled content. Because to me, that's a market development thing. It is not source reduction. Then we get to polystyrene. There was a hard ban on polystyrene in the ballot measure, and DART was going to fight it all the way. But this bill has what I call a de facto ban. They cannot sell into California after 2025 if they can't hit a 25% recycling rate. There's no way they can hit that. They're not even at 2% right now. So even the Nature Conservancy that's worked with us on the bill said it's a de facto ban. But that almost caused the bill to die because some environmentalists fought it and said it needs to say ban. And I think one of the things that I advise is that we stop fighting over words and make sure the product is the product you're looking for. I don't care what we call it, as long as I get what I want, I'm fine. So we got what we wanted. It's basically a ban by 2025. So there's some details about the bill. It has to be one PRO for at least 7 years. After that, they can split off and have different PROs that compete. But this was the work of a lot of people, CalPERG and Heal the Bay and so many different groups. And that's us on the beach in Hermosa Beach celebrating the bill passage. We also have an advisory board. And these are the members, the voting members and non-voting members. And I've applied to be the environmental organization, protection organization. We haven't heard back yet who's going to be appointed by CalRecycle, so we're waiting to hear on that. The bill also requires eco-modulation. You all know what that is, where the companies will have to pay based on their environmental aspects of the bill, of the product, and the package, which includes recyclability, proper labeling we put in the bill, and avoiding impacts to low-income and disadvantaged communities. And I'm going to not read all this, but the plus in the EPR 3.0 to me is that we really put a lot of protections for environmental justice into the bill. 2 of the 13 voting members on the advisory board have to represent environmental justice in disadvantaged low-income or rural communities. And we have all kinds of language, here's some of it in the bill, to protect those communities. So I just wanted you to know that that's very, very important, and we have done everything we can to protect them so we don't end up with more plants in disadvantaged neighborhoods. Now, this is also important. We got a mitigation fund. We got the environmental cleanup that is in that circular and equitable economy that the Ellen MacArthur Foundation said, remediating natural systems that we've harmed. We actually got the producers to agree to pay $5 billion over 10 years to California to clean up the mess from all the packaging. 40% is going to go to state agencies for the parks and so forth, and 60% is going to go to environmental justice communities and public health groups, with 75% of that going to disadvantaged and low income. I've never heard of this before. I'm super excited about this. 150 million of this money has to come from the plastics resins manufacturers. That's $500 million a year to clean up California. And we wouldn't have gotten that unless we had the ballot measure as a threat, which had to be pulled before this bill would pass. And quickly, just some exemptions. We did not cover the bottle bill materials. Those were exempted. Medical products, infant formula, and some other things. So for example, if a commercial cardboard, we have an exemption. If you get over 70% recycling rate that the state verifies, then and demonstrates to them every 2 years, you could get an exemption because you did such a good job. You kind of got an off ramp. Because we wanted an incentive for companies to do better than the 65%. And we defined what is recycling. It does not include gasification, pyrolysis, and solvent-based technologies. This is our way of getting at chemical recycling, advanced recycling, whatever you want to call it. So that's how we defined it. And I urge other states to look at it. I know you've already probably defined it, but that is our definition of what recycling is. Now, enforcement. This was called the Heidi clause because we not only have $50,000 a day fines, but the backstop is if the PRO is failing to do their job, then the state can take the keys away from the drunk driver. And we wanted that because of our experience with the carpet industry, which continues to be a immense time sink dealing with them. So CalRecycle, this is a big deal, and CalRecycle was very pleased with it. There's a timeline there. Again, it goes through 2032, but it's an ongoing bill. It has no sunset, and I won't get into all those dates. If you'd like to listen to our working groups, we have a working group, and we're talking with all the manufacturers, even the new PRO, and local governments, et cetera, and trying to help get the regs done. We only have 2 years to get them done. If you're interested in tracking that, let me know, and I'd be happy to include you. Now, I just want to address this very quickly. Can DRS and EPR for packaging coexist? There was a whole great NERC webinar we did on this, but I just want to say yes, they can. And our packaging bill went up sideways, right next to our existing bottle bill. And although I am promoting that we do bottle bill first at the national level, we haven't seen one EPR for packaging bill implemented yet. So let's let that do its thing. But we have 10 states with good and means working, of course, EPR or bottle bill. So we want to take those experiences and bring those national first. So just quickly, what's going on in California, and then we'll talk about the nation. So this year, we're seeing bills to clean up the carpet program. I'm sponsoring that. We're doing PV end of life, solar panels, EV batteries. We're working with Senator Allen on that. Gas cylinders, all kinds of gas cylinders. There's lots of debate on EPR and source reduction there. Textiles, right to repair, and adding glass juice containers of 48 ounces or larger to the bottle bill. So those are the big ones in California this year that are in play. Now, regarding chemicals, and our state has really gotten into this. The Attorney General, Rob Bonta, is suing the manufacturers of PFAS, which I'm thrilled about. So that's ongoing in the background. But the state's been introduced these bills on banning them in menstrual products, chemicals in food. We've got a bill, cosmetic safety, getting the PFAS out of cosmetics, PFAS in cleaning products, and notification of when, like, why are we not being told? How can you make a good purchasing decision when you don't even know what's in these products? So, and then there's, of course, a counter opposition bill by the industry. So we're opposing that. Moving to national work. These are the big things we're working on at the national level, which is the National Bottle Bill, or recycling refund, which is a better way to say it, according to the poll, which I'll explain. The Wipes Act and the Pipes Act. This is the truth in labeling for the flushable wipes that we talked about earlier. Other truth in labeling laws, getting those introduced in other states. They've died in other states this year. Maryland did not make it. Hawaii didn't make it either, but I'd really love to see that happening in other states and nationally. Fluorescent lamp sales bans, and then the PV recycling national dialogues. These are all things that we're working on in depth. So, National Bottle Bill. We're calling it actually recycling refund. The Can Manufacturers Institute did a study that shows that people respond to that much better nationwide. Bill has, sounds like a mandate, gets people upset. And recycling refund sounds very positive to people generally, so we call it that. We did a whole webinar on this, and there's a link to the PowerPoint there. But we really do believe that it's time. We have 10 states that have had bottle bills, some as long as 50 years old. Litter is everywhere across this country. The plastic is everywhere. We've got companies like Indorama that cannot meet their recycled content targets for the US without importing plastic, even though we're throwing most of it in the landfill across the country, because we just don't have enough collection. And over 50% of the containers being collected and recycled in the US are now coming from the 10 bottle bill states, including Maine. So we want to get a recycling refund introduced. We're working with Senator Merkley. We're working with Senator Angus King. And he says he'll support as long as we get a Republican, because it has to be bipartisan. So we're working on that. But the Keep America Beautiful study was very clear. We'll have 50% less litter across the country if we have a bottle bill. So that's very, very important. And not your Susan Collins, but the Container Recycling Institute, Susan Collins, says that we'd save 10.3 million tons and would get recycled annually if we got a national bottle bill passed. And your state's collecting the most. It looks like the recycling rate is highest in Maine, so congratulations. California is not where it should be because of our collection situation. And again, the government runs the program, not the producers, but it's very clear bottle bills work. And I think it's great that we get back to this discussion about using reuse. When I was a kid, we would get our Coke in a wood crate from the gas station, and we would return all the bottles and get a new one. And we can go back to that or something like it. So we have a whole bottle bill walk the halls. We just did that March 31st. We met with Chuck Grassley. We met with Republicans, Democrats, independents, all on the Senate side, and started seeding the soil for this to happen. We would not preempt state bills. That is not in the plan. So if you wanted to opt in to a national bill, you could. If you want to keep your bill, that's just fine. The goal is, though, over time, to at least get the labeling and the deposit amount aligned nationally, just for labeling purposes. But that would be way out, because probably Arkansas and states like that would not be able to pellet more than a 5-cent deposit to start. They've never seen anything like it before, but we'll see. The bill should be introduced soon. If you want to help us, just sign up here at americasbottlebill.com, and you can get on our listserv, and we'll start sending you information as it comes. The bill language is in its 3rd round of edits. I am feeling more confident at every round. We're about ready to get a bipartisan introduction, and I'm hoping for May. So we'd love to have your help on that. And we were excited that Senator Collins and Merkley have introduced the Wipes Act and the Truth in Labeling Act for wipes. So I'm very excited to share this with you. It's your legislator, and want to thank her for being part of this effort. So this would be something, if you can help us with this bill, please do. Nobody should have this terrible situation where you buy something, you do what it says on the label, and then you end up with hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars of damage in your home. Now, nationally also, we're working on the banning toxic lighting, and we have 9 or 8 states that still have the bill alive. Yours is one of them, which I'll be testifying today on in support of. And we're very excited that that seems to be going well, because that'll feed into the National Monotmuc Convention, which is in the fall. We want to see mercury lighting banned throughout the world. It's in glass, it's not getting captured back, and it's breaking and exposing people. And our workers. I do want to highlight that our workers are breathing this stuff again. And Colorado's bill is moving, and we're excited about that. We've also got the PV Recycling Working Group. If you're interested in getting involved in this, let me know. We're in our 4th month of these discussions, and they're national with the solar energy industry and some recyclers and others. I think we have like 60 different groups represented now. And we've got subcommittees working on things like reuse of the solar panels and life cycle impacts, et cetera. So if you're interested in that, let me know. But I'm the paid facilitator to work on that with them. And I could pretty much go on all day, but I don't want to bore you anymore. So I'm happy to take your questions. And again, we're 2 organizations, a C3 and a C4. You can join either. And you can follow us on social media. We post a lot. And so we'd love to have you reshare our posts too. That's also very helpful to moving the needle. So thank you so much for Maine's leadership and partnership. And I'm happy to take questions.
Do you have any questions in the room? Comments, concerns? You were? None? It looks like we're all right, Heidi. Thank you so much for joining us today. Big round of applause.
I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much. I wish I could have been there in person.
Well, thank you and good luck in your testifying this afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, take care.